I'm here with Ethann Fox and Barb Morey. We are for the Awake and Empowered Expo that's happening in Detroit, October 11th through the 13th. And this is a series of presenters that we're interviewing for the expo. Barb, tell me a little bit about what you're presenting, or maybe just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've always seen auras, but I never realized they were called that until later in my life. And I've always used the fact that I saw energy with whatever I was doing, working with people. I was doing healing with crystals and body work, and I always was using that until when I realized what it was. I found out like I said, in my later years, I then incorporated the colors of the aura in my body work.
What kind of other body work do you do besides aura readings?
I've done the Jinshin-Do, Shiatsu, Myofascial, upper cranial, and Jinshin-Do, and a little reflexology. I've used all those techniques, and I use it in however the person individually needs it. And so that's why I really don't call myself a masseuse. I call myself a body worker. And I also use crystals with my body work in some form, whether it's in the middle or the end, or putting them around after I've done the other part, and using a wand, crystal wand, to work on people. I've even put them in energy circles. It all depends on the individual person and what they need.
So it's a holistic approach, essentially.
Yes, that is correct.
So we're also here with Ethann Fox, and in his interview, he mentioned that you two met at a raw food potluck, and you had approached him, and you saw something very unusual with him. Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay. Well, it was my first raw food potluck. A friend of mine brought me, and I was kind of quiet, and I was looking at everybody there, and I looked at Ethann, and I asked my friend who he was, and she told me. And so before I was getting ready to leave, I told her, I says, well, I cannot leave without talking to him. And she says, why not? And I says, I have to tell him something. So I went up to him and I introduced myself, and I told him, I said, Ethann, you have the largest aura I have ever seen. I equate you with one of the spiritual masters like Gandhi. I says, I think you're going in that path. And I said, I can eventually see you working a stadium. So I guess that triggered his thoughts on what to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ethann, when she first said that to you, what were your thoughts at the raw food potluck?
Well, it explained a lot of things, because for several years we've had these events going on, and I'd noticed that people were always commenting on how they felt really great after coming to one of our events. They were really happy, and their happiness stayed with them for several weeks, and they couldn't wait to come back. I never really put two and two together to see that it had anything to do with me until Barb showed up. I just assumed, well, maybe it was the food or something, but after she showed up, it put into perspective a lot of things that have happened in my life that were similar, and really started me down the path to doing the energy transfer events that we've been doing ever since.
Now, as far as the auras are concerned, what could you give a run through the basics as far as colors or radiance, as far as distance it travels outside the body, and the relevance of that?
Well, most people have at least 2 inches out from their body, as a natural aura, and then they have other colors and fields depending on their emotions. But your core color usually stays about 2 inches from your body, unlike Ethann's, who's all over the place. But there's many different colors. I'll tell you a few. There's the yellow aura, which is the youngest and the oldest color, which Ethann and I both have. And then there's the green, which can be people would like to work with. They like to work with people. They like to work with people such as healers, doctors, things like that. They need, in order for them to be satisfied in life, They have to be working with people. And then you have a lavender color, which can be a healing color, but a person that's lavender tends to be a little on the naive side. But usually once I tell them that, then they are more aware of that and they're more open to that. And then there's the blues, the people that they don't believe anything unless it's actually proven to them. And of course, Ethann has a little bit of a blue side, which things have been proven to him over and over. So, and there's other colors too, but those are some of the basic colors.
Okay. Now, is that affected minute by minute, second by second by the person's environment, or is it something that stays with them, one color stays with them the whole life, or is it a mixture of both?
Well, everyone has a core color that stays with them their whole life, but we all are a series of emotions, and our emotions will play. I mean, sometimes when you're angry, you'll see red. Sometimes red's a protection in my case, since I was a preemie, and they didn't know back then that in an incubator, your eyes can be destroyed by oxygen. I had a red overlay to protect my eyes because I had too much to do in this lifetime to become blind.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking before the interview. I recently read a Edgar Cayce book. I brought along a quote, and this was his description of auras. As he said, "It's the weather vane of the soul. It shows which way the winds of destiny are blowing." Okay, so Ethann, you're going to be doing a energy transfer at the expo, and we touched on that before, but I'd like to go over it again with Barb here now.
Well, essentially, the main focus is to raise consciousness, and there are also impacts on the physical body. Barb can speak a little bit to what actually happens in the energy field, but she'll be there to help me, and what we like to do is to take a look at everybody's energy field beforehand as a group, just to have a before for what it looks like and what the colors are and so on, and then during the energy transfer itself, what I do is now this will be a bigger group, so I'll be sitting in the front of the room, and I ask everyone to focus on things that they are, negative emotions, any negative experience they have, any relationships that are difficult for them, or if they can't think of anything, then focus on their karma or ask their higher consciousness to release their karma. And I ask the group to imagine that as everyone to imagine that as a dark cloud leaving the top of their head and send it to me in the middle of the room. And at the same time, I send a white light energy from my heart center to everyone in the room as well. And so we do that for about 20 minutes or so, until Barb says we're done, because she can observe, she can actually see the energy moving around the room, and when we're done, she stops us and we move on, and then she does an assessment of what everybody's energy fields look like after. Mm-hmm. So that's essentially the process in a nutshell.
Okay, and so you two act as a team, a consciousness team, if you will. Barb, explain what you see during the process.
Well, each time it's different. Usually people's energy is not that high when we begin. And of course it doubles or triples throughout the energy. And I have to think about this one time when I was watching it. The energy, there was so much negative energy surrounding Ethann that I could hardly see him for a minute. It was, to me, it was a description of a tornado going around him, swirling around him, but actually not touching him. And then this white glowing was going out and reaching out to people like wheels of a spoke, where he was touching everybody. Sometimes I see it clearer and sometimes I don't see it as clear, but this one time everything was really clear. But you don't have to worry about you're sending negative energy to anyone else, because Ethann has the way of pulling it towards him, so it's not going to bounce off anybody else, so they won't receive anyone else's negative karma.
Yeah. And you've mentioned before that I've been doing energy transfer or two with both of you, and you mentioned before that the people that have been to previous energy transfers or taken part in them walk in the door from the get-go with already a bigger aura. So it's something that's a lasting change. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Ethann, any questions for Barb while we're here with you?
Well, I'd like Barb, if you could share I know we related to Edgar Cayce and how, in my experience, I've met a lot of people with brilliant gifts and abilities, but but Barb is really the only person I've met who's got the ability to see energy fields so well, and it reminds me of how Edgar Cayce would describe his experiences with seeing that, like the story that's relayed about him in his book, where he was about to get on an elevator in a skyscraper. The elevator door opened and he noticed nobody had an aura, and so he decided not to step on it. He didn't know, what that was. He'd never seen it before, and so what happened was the cables of the elevator broke and everyone actually died. And so Barb, I know Barb has some similar stories like that, and I'd like her to share one of them so we can, discuss that a little bit.
Well, I used to work at the post office, and I was up in front. I worked in the box section, and we sort flats, which are those magazines. So I was up there sorting magazines, and one of my coworkers came running up to me looking really scared, and I was looking at him, and I'm thinking, I kind of looked at him, and I thought, wow, he's not glowing. To me, I didn't realize it was aura at the time. So I thought, I think he needs me to help him. So I went to look for him, and I found him in the men's bathroom. He had died. So I thought, I says, if they're not glowing, like I said, mind you, I didn't know aura at the time, they're going to die. So from that point on, I took a look at every single pilot, at every single plane that I went into, because if they weren't glowing, I wasn't going to go. But also that has also helped me. I was on an airplane going back to Detroit from Vegas, and we went into a severe thunderstorm, and we dropped 500 feet, and the things came down, and people were screaming and crying. And so I looked around at everybody, and I said, oh, you're all glowing. I said, we're not going to die. We're going to get back to Detroit fine. And then everybody calmed down. So it gave them some peace of mind.
So besides Edgar Cayce, who are other people that influence you, or people that gave you some information about that to help you understand? Well,
I would run into people. I'm a very curious person. I consider myself like a sponge. I want to suck in information from everywhere. I started to go to different meetings, and one of them I met Barbara Bowers, and she's out of California, and she writes books. And I went in there, and I tried to be real quiet. And of course, she picked on my talent up just like that. And she said, and then she started saying, and just like Barb, she realized my talent, and she helped me understand the colors more. And of course, the more I got to understand the colors, the more I started to kind of try to fade it out a little bit, because in a way I felt like, and it's my personal, my mother said I'm always higher morals than anyone. I felt like I didn't want to do an invasion of privacy, so I always ask permission before I start looking at everybody, unless they're in a situation where, they already know what's going to happen, and then it's you free range.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
I'm curious, you've been doing this for a long time. Have you noticed any difference in the consciousness of people as a whole in recent years than say, 10 years ago? I mean, is there any growth in consciousness happening or can you even see that with energy fields?
I honestly think that there's more and more people out there willing to be more open-minded. Where 10 years ago, I met so many more people that you couldn't even talk to about that. I think people on the whole are reaching out for more information, and I do think our consciousness is beginning to rise.
One of the things, on a side note, I know you like sci-fi, Barb. You mentioned that to me a while back, and I always, when I first met you, I felt like you were the Oracle from the Matrix, the lady that was baking the cookies, that had all the answers. I just wanted to throw that in there before I ended the interview. Any final notes about what you'll be presenting at the expo or the expo itself? Are you excited about this? Obviously you are, but
I'm going to be working with Kimberly, and we are going to talk about the physical and the spiritual aspects of aura reading, and how it heals, She's going to take some photography, and she'll be able to interpret it spiritually. I'll be able to go on the physical side. And so we're just going to kind of give a lecture about that, and we're going to have some demonstrations. We're going to take some pictures and so that maybe even a group picture at the end, so that people can actually see what we're talking about, because people always need to have visual. Yeah. And I'm just glad that I met her, because she kind of validates what I see, on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. I've never doubted myself. Okay. I always knew I was different, and my parents allowed me to express myself. I was before television, so I had more of an imagination. So no, I think that, I really don't, perceive anything that I've ever done there was never any doubt. I've always had the confidence to go forward, because I have had the intuition that whatever I'm doing is the correct way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the TV and the computers have stifled people's creativity or children's creativity?
I think that everything has its own purpose. I do feel that television has kind of controlled us as a mass, as far as thinking. I know when I first saw television back in the 50s, early 50s, it was black and white. It was a little round screen. It was so fuzzy, and they only had like 4 channels. I didn't like it. I would rather read a book or listen to radio or, something like that. So I do think it does have an effect on that, and I do think that we should think about what we watch and try to walk away from it. And I'm just as guilty as everyone else, because I get caught up in some of the programs. But I do think that we should limit our television watching. But it's only my opinion, and I'm certainly not going to control anyone else's.
Okay, I think that concludes the interview. Thanks for joining us both.